Good morning, everyone.
Good
My name is
morning.
Mario Giudice. Thank you for being here today. They protect us from criminals, terrorists, and wild animals. They help us provide food for our family. They even entertain us.
Oh my God.
What am I talking about? I'm talking about guns. Gun violence is a very volatile topic. Here is how Jason Sneed frames it in an article posted on cnsnews.com on November 13th, 2015, titled, "Is there a gun violence epidemic? The numbers say no." Mr. Sneed claims the following: "The recent mass shooting in Oregon has brought the seemingly endless debate on gun control back into the national spotlight. As we, as some insist, in the midst of a gun violence crisis, gun control advocates would certainly have you think so." Rolling Stone magazine has an entire section on its website dedicated to gun violence entitled, "Guns, Americans' Violence Epidemic." Hillary Clinton recently stated that this epidemic of gun violence knows no boundaries. In my survey, when I asked how strongly the class felt that we have a gun control crisis in our society today, 75% of the class leaned toward agreeing that we do. As an owner of several firearms and a holder of a Pennsylvania license to carry firearms, I do recognize that we have an issue that needs to be addressed, but I would not classify it as a crisis. And over the next several minutes, I will provide factual evidence from research I conducted over the course of several weeks, in which I read dozens of articles that spanned Bucks County Community College Library and over 30 websites. Using these facts, I will present my case explaining why we do not have a gun control crisis by discussing the following questions. Do we have a gun control crisis? What are the real facts regarding gun violence? Is there room for improvement? Do we have gun control crisis? The media, political pundits, and anti-gun groups want you to believe we have a gun control crisis today. Emily Miller published an article in the Washington Post on September 2nd, 2013, titled, "Liberal Media Distort the Gun Debate, Loaded Language Misleads the Public." Ms. Miller comments that, "I am a member of the mainstream media, but I also am pro-Second Amendment. There are few in the journalism profession who share my beliefs. The public, therefore, get a heavily biased view of firearm ownership and gun violence in America." For example, in the same article, Ms. Miller states, "The big three broadcasting networks, ABC, NBC, and CBS, ran 216 segments on gun policy on their evening and morning shows in the month after December 2012 Newtown shooting, according to a media research study. Of these, the stories advocating more gun control outnumbered stories featuring opposition to new restrictions by a ratio of 8 to 1. CBS was the most biased, with a 22 to 1 ratio of gun control to gun rights stories." In another article posted on Mint Press News on February 19, 2013, written by Frederick Reese, titled, "Media Coverage of Gun Violence, What Gets Left Out Could Say Volumes," according to NBC News Project, Mr. Reese states, "Some homicides don't get any publicity either, unless a killer chooses a public place, annihilates an entire family, or shoots up a Walmart. He might not even get on a website, in the newspaper, or on TV. Not on a holiday weekend, competing with the festivities in the nation's capital." Mr. Reese continues by stating, "The news media has traditionally been called the people's eyes, for it is the role of the reporters and journalists to see what the average person can't and report to the people unbiasedly and accurately. Many also perpetuate facts that are decades old. For example, you hear about how 40% of guns are purchased without a background check. Here is a quote from President Obama made on January 16, 2013, from a speech on gun violence. He states, "The law already requires licensed gun dealers to run background checks, and over the last 14 years, that's kept 1.5 million of the wrong people from getting their hands on guns." But it's hard to enforce that law when as many as 40% of all gun purchases are conducted without a background check. Here's what FactCheck.org had to say about this quote. That figure is based on analysis of a nearly 2 decades old survey of less than 300 people that essentially asked participants whether they thought the guns they had acquired, and not necessarily purchased, came from a federally licensed dealer. And one of the authors of the report, often cited as a source for the claim, Philip Cook of Duke University, told our friends at politicfact.com that he has no idea whether the very old number applies to today. Do we have gun violence today? Yes, we do. But that does not mean we have a gun control crisis. Let's move on to my facts. What are the real facts about gun violence? Based on the latest mortality rates or death statistics in 2013 from the Center for Disease Control, or the CDC, there were over 2.5 million deaths. Firearm deaths are categorized under all injuries. May not be easy for you to see. But looking at this category, all injury deaths in 2013 totaled just over 192,000. Of that, 33,636 deaths were related to firearms. However, over 60% of those 33,000 deaths were related directly to suicide. As a side note, in 2013, there were over 41,000 suicides. Why is our suicide rate not a crisis today? Think of the informative speech Tiffany just gave about the impact of mental health on suicide. Let's look it down a little bit further. Here's your suicide rate. Of the 33,000 deaths, 21,000, or 63%, are related to suicide, or only 11,000, just over, are related to homicide. Now, there is much public debate surrounding gun violence today. Yet, according to statistics, of over 33,000 firearm deaths, 11,208 are homicide-related. This fact should lead you to believe that the media and anti-gun critics make the gun control crisis seem as if it's out of control. If we introduce statistics from the Department of Justice, the DOJ, the CDC, and the FBI, their numbers for firearm-related homicides indicate a decline in homicides year over year. So this is from the FBI. From 2009 to 2013, you can clearly see that there's a decline in homicide. Oh, I forgot about that.
I didn't know that. I could have just touched the screen.
It doesn't always work.
Oh.
That's why
It's because you're on the website now.
No, I'm not.
he took screenshots.
There we go. I touched the screen by mistake. You can clearly see that there's a decline in homicides related to firearms. According to the Department of Justice, firearm-related homicides declined 39% from 1993 to 2011. The CDC, homicides between 2003 on this side going to the other side to 2013 clearly show a decline in the number of homicide deaths related to firearms. And to look at it a little bit further, again, it's the same information. From 2003 to 2013, the number of homicides per 100,000 went from 4.1 down to 3.5. Now, is there room for improvement? Of course, there's always room for improvement. You will also find that many pro-gun enthusiasts, such as myself, agree on this. Here's a clear example where the current system in place for background checks failed. In an editorial from the Tampa Bay Times dated July 17, 2015, titled, "Here's Why Background Checks on Gun Buys Are Crucial," it discusses how Dylan Roof was able to legally purchase a firearm which he then used to shoot 9 people in a South Carolina church. The article states the following: Roof was able to slip past barriers designed to prohibit gun sales to unqualified buyers because information regarding his recent arrest has not entered into the criminal database by local law enforcement agencies. Separately, an FBI investigator did not uncover disqualifying information before the 72-hour investigation window closed. In effect, Ruth was allowed to purchase the gun. Another very public issue is the gun show loophole. This issue brings to light that private sales of firearms do not require a background check, and therefore makes it very easy to transfer guns into the hands of a person that would otherwise fail that background check. Here's the ruling on private sales of firearms as per the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. A person may transfer a firearm to an unlicensed resident of his or her state, provided the transferor does not know or have reasonable cause to believe the transferee is prohibited from receiving or possessing firearms under federal law. I believe that all private gun sales should require background checks. In fact, according to my survey, all but one of you agreed with me. This one person who was undecided, I hope now you've changed your mind. We could introduce a federal database that tracks all sales of firearms. In my survey, again, one of you did not support this idea, and perhaps now you may reconsider your position given my last 2 points. These are some examples how we can improve laws around gun control with hope that we would help continue to effect a drop in gun violence. I'd like to close by stating the following comments and facts I've just presented are in no way meant to marginalize the tragedies that have involved firearms. We should continue to work on solutions that would foster improvements on gun violence, such as the federal database for tracking gun sales and extending background checks to include private sales of firearms. I leave you with a final thought from 2 quotes which the authors are questionable. To conquer a nation, you must first disarm its citizens. To which I say, a free people ought not only be armed and disciplined, but they should have sufficient arms and ammunition to maintain a status of independence from any who might attempt to abuse them, which would include their own government. Thank you.